Why isn't anybody talking about the Atlanta Hawks? Why isn't anybody talking about Jaden McDaniels' injury? This hurts Minnesota so bad. Why isn't anybody talking about the fact that the Pistons keep winning without Cade Cunningham? We got a lot of things nobody's talking about except for this show. We're talking about it today on the All-NBA Show. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllCity. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, the host over at the Volumes Hoops Tonight. It's Jason Timpf, freshly cut, maybe out of depression a little bit. Out of a tough Lakers game last night. How you doing, JT?
First of all, it's good to see you, man. We went last Monday, so it's been a week and a half. Yeah, there's this weird thing that happens when you go from having super long hair to much shorter hair like this, where every once in a while you just like catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and you're like, who the hell is that guy? Or like just the random stuff you have to deal with long hair that you don't deal with anymore. It's been definitely weird. I will say last night it was so funny. So I had this live show scheduled. And I sent out this tweet
I saw this
at halftime. And I'm
Loved
like, hey,
it.
live show's canceled. You know, we're just going to do a regular video. And everyone's like, oh, Jason's dunking the live show. I'm like, no, quite literally, I just wasn't going to sit around and watch the rest of whatever that travesty was. So I was like, I'm not going to look at my wife and be like, hey, we got to wait for another hour and 15 minutes while Bronny James tries to bring it up against Cason Wallace and just gets picked over and over and over again. So yeah, that was the idea.
Sure, man. Sure. No, I'm just teasing you, man. I'm just teasing you. It was a tough one. And by the way, hair looks great, man. I like it. It's a good look.
Thanks.
So we're doing the thing today, which I love. It just gives us a chance to talk about these stories that are a little under the radar. And we got a lot of them. Like I think we have 8 or 9 of these topics, including Paul George. I didn't even mention him, but he's been great since coming back. Donovan Mitchell in a shooting slump, like a pretty major one. We talked about this last week, but it's continuing. Jamal Murray, Tim Hardaway Jr. There's a lot of good stuff in here. So we have some fun topics, but we're going to start with the thing everybody's talking about, which is the LA Lakers. After really feeling themselves over the last 2 weeks, just playing some great basketball, extends for several weeks beyond that, but really over the last 2 weeks. But last night they got a reality check against the league's best team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, 139-96. And I'm curious just to start off, we're going to have some major takeaways here, but before anything, let's just talk about the game very quickly. Why did the Thunder open up this game to such a wide margin? What was it about the game that made it go the way it went?
Well, LeBron and JJ Redick both talked about this right after the game, but it was pretty simple. It's points off of turnovers. I have that Lakers Collective show that I do with Trevor Lane and Jovan Buha, and we talked extensively on Wednesday. We were like, what are we looking for in this performance on Thursday night? And there's no delusions of grandeur there. Like, Lakers fans are aware that we've been playing better basketball and that there's some real potential there that didn't exist. Like, the way I framed it is like a month and a half ago, you would have thought the Lakers were probably somewhere around a plus 150 to plus 175 underdog in a first round series against Houston, Minnesota, anybody, meaning like they're probably going to lose. And now you'd probably view them as like a minus 150, minus 175 favorite in the first round series against Minnesota or against Houston. So like they had flipped the script to being like an almost certain 5-game first round exit to like being like hey, maybe we can win a first round series and like get into a second round series with San Antonio. They're inexperienced. Maybe we make a conference finals run. There's no delusions of grandeur that they're like better than Oklahoma City or anything. And the main thing that I was concerned about going into that game was just like, will the Lakers be able to compete? The specific phrase I used on Wednesday was like, will Oklahoma City dislodge the Lakers from their foundation, or will they be able to play Lakers basketball? And you could immediately see from the opening tip of that game, there were several players that like straight up were not capable of playing in that environment. In the most scary way, Austin Reaves. He had 10 turnovers in his first 2 games against Oklahoma City this year and looked really limited. And he had 4 turnovers in his first shift, multiple of which were pick 6 turnovers that went the other way for dunks and layups for OKC. And if you looked at what they were like straight up just like, oh, you're not prepared for the speed that Oklahoma City brings to the table. He runs a little ball screen with LeBron on the right wing, throws a pocket pass to LeBron, even though it's not open. Like anybody watching the broadcast could see like, oh, That pocket pass is not open. He forces it in there. J-Dub shoots the gap and takes it. Tries to throw a pass to a cutter down the middle of the lane, throws it right into Lu Dort's hands. Just like a lob pass to DeAndre Ayton that was like 5 feet over his head that had like no chance to be completed. Just a lot of like just sloppiness and unpreparedness for the intensity of that situation, which was super disappointing because Austin knew that was the case before the game. Everyone knew that Oklahoma City was going to bring that intensity and they weren't ready for it. The second piece of it was more like I was skeptical going in, and that was DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton's been playing really well post All-Star break. He's been a guy that has stepped up the intensity, has had a lot of self-aware quotes in the media where he's talked about how like he's aware now that he's got to be a guy who's a dirty work guy, so on and so forth. And I thought he looked asleep to start that game. He dropped back-to-back easy drop-off passes for dunks, one from Luka and one from LeBron that both hit him right in the hands where it's like, dude, wake up. Like, what are you doing? And then he was getting beat to inside position constantly by Isaiah Hartenstein. Isaiah Hartenstein was just playing harder than him. And it was like, oh, like, that's right. Ayton's like not capable of playing in a game this intense. And so really, if you want the story of the game to me was Oklahoma City really shook the Lakers foundation. And then the piece that really sent it over the edge was the shooting. And don't get me wrong, like shooting is like every team that guards Oklahoma City leaves Lu Dort open a certain amount, leaves certain guys open. That's kind of like the way you guard OKC. You shade towards Shai and you try to force other guys to make shots. And they went 7 for 9 on their first 9 threes, which like at a certain point, that's hot shooting for a team that doesn't typically shoot that well. If you stay on your foundation and you execute, right, you weather the storm, you're down 12 or 13 after that run. Maybe they cool off a little bit. You get yourself back in the game. But I thought the Lakers completely lost their composure. And when they lost their composure, all of a sudden it's 21, all of a sudden it's 25. And now it's like such a big deficit that it's impossible to overcome. And so really, like I talked about this with you before we started the live. I was like, there's a certain like barrier to entry with OKC where it's like, you've got to be able to handle their pressure enough to get into your stuff and to like actually play and look like yourself. The Thunder are better than the Lakers. The Lakers are not as bad as they looked last night, but they lost their composure and they fell apart, which is the most concerning part. They didn't even play like the Lakers last night. And that just goes to show you how far they are away from passing that barrier to entry with Oklahoma City.
And sometimes, because I love this point, it's kind of the big point for the Lakers is from this game. Sometimes this is something you say after the fact, right? A game happens. You're like, they weren't themselves that tonight. They lost hold of the rope. The score was 9-2. They take a timeout. We're 90 seconds into the game, less than 90 seconds into the game. And that timeout was, okay, you just took it's like a boxer. You just took a huge punch in the first 10 seconds of a fight. Like, where are you going to go now? And coming out of that timeout, it just felt like the Lakers were rattled. Not like, oh, they don't have it tonight. Like they were rattled, sped up, making bad decisions, confused, just stymied. And I think that's the thing that that concerns you. It makes you question whether the Lakers, with all their talent, are a team that when they're comfortable in their rhythm, they're going to look like juggernauts. But if you get to dislodge them, do they have some? Are they able to beat you in the mud? Are they able to now, okay, the game is this texture, let's adjust it and fit to it? They looked at least last night like they weren't up for the task, and they didn't have it in them. And the point that you made, I think, is a big one. Two guys in particular. Hartenstein is such a fun player to be in the role that he's in because he is a pain in the ass. If you're going up against him, it's like, all right, well, this guy's going to go for a lot of screens and dives. He's going to go for a lot of offensive rebounds. I have to work from start to finish. My job as DeAndre Ayton now is that everything's going to be just exhausting, and I have to be up for it. He wasn't up for it. And then you mentioned just bobbling passes and not finishing. So there's the first problem. The second one is Austin Reaves, which, as you referenced, a big part of why you buy the Lakers is they have these three guys that can all create points. If OKC says not against us, you can't, because what we do is we just get into you and you're never going to have an easy matchup. There's no switch this guy onto you and attack. There's nobody there you can do that to. What happens and how does he respond to it? And to your point, it didn't just feel like Austin Reaves missed shots. It looked like Oklahoma City presents a challenge for him that makes him the worst version of himself. And that's why I think it was a little bit revealing about the Lakers.
Yeah, I talked about this on my show last night. Like the Austin's gonna get some sort of massive extension this summer, right? Like it's gonna be somewhere in the territory of between 150 and $200 million, like probably in that 150 range for 4 years, and that's your running mate. that's the Luka Dončić running mate for the next 3-4 years. And I don't care what you think about the rest of the roster. San Antonio and Oklahoma City are going to be the bar that you have to pass over the course of the next few seasons. And it just doesn't matter if Austin is incapable of thriving in this particular matchup. Austin's got to find a way to handle the speed that Oklahoma City brings to the table. He's got to find a way to refine his processing a little bit. Austin, it's funny. You look at the Cavs game the other night. He had 3 or 4 plays where he kind of got sped up going downhill and threw really bad passes to DeAndre Ayton on rolls that ended up in turnovers. And Austin can have a problem with getting sped up a little bit. And that's against a Cavs team that's been playing no defense post All-Star break. And so there's a certain level that Oklahoma City can reach that if he can't figure out how to solve that puzzle, this entire construct for the Lakers is doomed. Because let's say that Luka's hurt and he can't finish the season and this Lakers roster is doomed anyway. But let's say they go into the summer and they nail a couple of trades and they bring in a starting level small forward and a much better center than DeAndre Ayton. And Luka takes even better care of his body so that he can be not only thin, but thin and able to withstand the grind of the season and make it to the finish line. And you find yourself in a Western Conference Finals series with Oklahoma City and Austin can't play, then you're dead. You're dead on arrival. And so that to me is seriously concerning. And the point that you made about them kind of coming out and like not looking confident and losing their composure, that's the real piece that kind of discouraged me coming out of that game. Because again, when you're playing in these types of games, you mentioned like, oh, can the Lakers win a game in the mud? They can, against teams that are limited in skill and also struggle in the mud. For instance, in this recent stretch in March, they did win a really tough, ugly couple of games against Houston. They did win a couple of tough, ugly games against Orlando. I thought that even in that Pistons game, they were in the lead late. Dennis Jenkins just hit a really tough left shoulder fade. Like they could have won that game. That was an ugly game. The difference is with that stretch of opponents, you could leave Orlando's shooters open and they were going to miss. You could leave Houston's shooters open and they were going to miss. You could leave Detroit's shooters open and they were going to miss. Oklahoma City brings that combination of like, we're in the mud, but we're also as skilled as you in a lot of these ways. And so, again, to me, there was some uncharacteristic hot shooting. Lou Dort, it wasn't just open shots. Lou Dort hit like a heavily contested 3 over Luka Dončić on the left wing where Luka was there and had his hand up. Like, you have to have a certain amount of composure in games like that, because when you're playing really good teams, like, and I'm talking about like the barriers to the championship, and like, as someone who's rooted for Denver, you've been in so many big playoff series over the last few years. You remember what it's like when you face like one of the real teams. They're going to go on runs. They're going to have stretches where they make shots. Anthony Edwards is going to have stretches where he's hitting his pull-up 3, right? Like, you're going to have runs where it looks like what you're doing isn't working, and you have to stay true to your formula. You have to continue to execute. You can't decompose and start getting stripped by Cason Wallace at half court the way that Luka did. Or I thought Luka took 3 or 4 really bad threes.
Oh man, this is part
stretch.
of what I mean about letting go of the rope or kind of quitting. Is it did feel like when they got down, and it was like 15 points very quickly, that they came down and there was a couple Luka, the little like I'm 0 pass, step back, get to my shot, where you're like, hey man, you're down 15. You need to settle down, not just hey, maybe I hit a contested step back 3 in this moment. It was almost like, all right, we're gonna throw a couple Hail Marys in the first quarter, see if we can get back into this game. And to me, again, it was a sign of the Lakers and sort of their approach.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's why it was like devastating on 2 levels, because you have the Luka injury piece where, let's say it's the best case scenario and he has a very mild strain, like severe cramp that has him miss 7 to 10 days, and he's able to start ramping up during the week of the play-in tournament. He's going to be out of shape and out of rhythm for your first round series. So that's the best case scenario. The more likely scenario is that like he comes back during the first round series at best, and very possibly could completely miss the first round series. So it's possible that last night ended the Lakers season. But even beyond that, that was one of those types of games where even if it wasn't Oklahoma City, I would have been scared after that. Like, what if Minnesota came out in a first round series, or even Houston with Amen Thompson and Tari Eason? They just came out and mauled you at the point of attack super physically, and you just decomposed and fell apart against the pressure. Like, it was the kind of game, Adam, that like almost completely removed any of the good vibes and optimism that I had gained with this team over the course of the previous month.
Because of the injury, which we'll get to in just 1 second, there's two more things I want to talk about here. Number one, you talk about playing in the mud. Oklahoma City, the thing about them is, this is what part of what makes them great, and why this is the real value, in my opinion, of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They can play in the mud and force the game to be played in the mud every single night because of their defense and their personnel, their personality, culture, all those things. You're going to be in the mud, except for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's never going to be in the mud. His game lends itself to, well, I can slow the game down. I can force the game to kind of be played where I want, and I'm going to get my shot. So you guys are all, it's a muddy game, it's physical, everything else, but my game's going to be played nice and controlled like it always is. And it's just by virtue of you can't get the ball out of his hands. He can keep his dribble alive against any type of pressure, including traps and double teams. And he can just play the slow style and get to his spot. So I think it's a credit to him, and part of what makes him so valuable is that he is impervious to the mud game. And then two, I was thinking of this list. I think it's kind of fun. Lu Dort's hitting threes. Some of this is that I think the real story is that they dislodged the Lakers from the rhythm, and it was their defense. But offensively, what was happening is Lu Dort hit some threes early that are just debilitating. And he might be the number one guy that when he's making threes against your team, it's the most frustrating. Oh. And I was thinking about why this is, because it's not like Draymond Green, who makes a threes every now and then. He'll hit 2 or 3 threes in a row, and you're like, okay, whatever, just luck. With Lu Dort, it's not luck, but it is streaky. He's a guy that seems to make 4 in a row or go 0 for 4, and it comes out in the wash as a pretty good shooter. But when you're the team that gets the 4 for 4 night, it's like, dang it, we got the 4 for 4 Lu Dort night, and that's why I think it's extra frustrating.
It's because he shoots with so much arc,
and the arc on it.
Yeah, he shoots with that insane arc. So, like, to your point, he could just get super streaky with it and have stretches where it's just not dialed in. Although I saw someone tweet out a stat, I can't remember the exact numbers, but he has annihilated the Lakers over the last few seasons. So
it might not be a coincidence.
It's been straight magnet ball as I've been rooting against the Lu Dort experience. The Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ball security thing, I think you mentioned, is key here, because like I saw a lot of Laker fans talking last night about like, oh well, look at Shai, he's being guarded by Jake LaRavia, and Luka's facing this all-time great defense. And I don't want to dismiss that point entirely, because there is some validity there. It's a little more complicated in the sense that like the way that the Lakers have been playing defense post deadline, like there's a reason why they played Jamal Murray into such an awful game. They played Donovan Mitchell into such an awful game the other night. They played Jalen Brunson into such an awful game the other night. Like there's a reason why the Lakers have been chewing up and spitting out stars. And it's because JJ's whole scheme is we're gapping at the top, we're strong side zoning, any cleared side ISOs, we're sending aggressive help. Like JJ's scheme is designed to stop stars and force you into high variance opportunities on the weak side. And the Lakers have been a much better defensive rotation team, obviously, in the last night notwithstanding. And I think Oklahoma City's speed really, really put them in tough spots last night in terms of their rotations. But the bottom line is, even if we account for the fact that obviously Luka's challenge offensively is greater in that matchup than Shai's challenge is, I think there's something to be said about the fact that like when Shai faces really good ball pressure teams, he just takes better care of the basketball. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is like, yeah, Shai had an easier challenge against Luka in the Lakers, but both Shai and Luka in their Western Conference schedules face more or less the same teams over the course of the 82 and face a lot of the same types of coverages. They look a little different depending on the team they play, and obviously those two players attack in different ways. But like Shai gets the other team's best defensive guard on every night. Shai faces an enormous amount of double teams. Shai faces a lot of late help on his drives, and Shai takes care of the damn basketball. And there is a certain amount of like Luka can get a little like, there's two things that really happen with the Luka against really, really good ball pressure perimeter defense teams. He can get loose with the basketball and start turning it over. and then he can start getting into his grift game too much. And look, every player does a certain amount of that. And I thought it was funny when everyone was calling out that clip from Luka where he tried to jump into Lou Dort on the left wing. Because, like, literally on the first play of the game, Shai had one of the most egregious flops I've ever seen. But, like, the point is there's a certain amount of that they do no matter what. But Luka has had phases of the season where he's getting, like, 13, 14 foul shot attempts a game because he's grifting so much. Versus when it's more in that 8-9 range, it's actually better because it means he's focusing more on scoring the basketball. And like Luka, when he gets into some of those types of matchups, instead of just being strong with the basketball and fighting for position and getting into his game, he tries to play the ref game. And that can even get even further into his head. And so like I came away from last night thinking, okay, you have this showdown, right? It's like you have the dude in Shai that most people think has been the best player in the world this season. And then you have this dude in Luka that a lot of people think has been the best player in the world post-deadline. And you have this opportunity for the two of them to make their case on national television. Like, here's your chance. Like, the show us what you got. And what it was a casual reminder of is, like, Luka just has an extremely low floor. If he's missing that step-back three, and if he gets loose with the basketball, he can be, like, disastrously bad. And Shai, like, it's just extremely rare for him to be disastrously bad because he doesn't turn the basketball over, and the vast majority of his shot profile is 17 feet and in. And so he's less susceptible to that kind of like variance than other stars are. And so I do think Luka's ceiling is higher than Shai's because he takes so many threes and he's a better passer. But Shai's baseline and where he is most likely to be on any given night, regardless of opponent, is just higher than Luka's right now because Luka's floor can fall out.
Really quickly, because I want to move on. He did have a hamstring injury last night. That looked kind of bad. And it looked bad because he just dropped the ball, kind of gave up a turnover, which I feel like players could usually, if it's not too bad, they can just get out of it and then whatever. Who knows what this injury is? But here's the thing, man. They're obviously not going anywhere without him, including first round. Even the first round is going to be a challenge. But now I look at it and say they're only a game up on Denver, 2 games up overall. If this is an injury that takes him out the last 5-6 games of the year, is there any chance now that their seeding is even in jeopardy?
Absolutely. I think when you look at the types of games they have on the remainder of the schedule, you've got an additional matchup with Oklahoma City. You have a game against Phoenix. Obviously, Denver, San Antonio on Saturday is a really tough one. Mm-hmm. But it's possible, although the Spurs did win again last night, so the 1 seed is still in flux. But it's possible still that the OKC San Antonio thing gets resolved before the final couple games of the season, and then they sit their guys against Denver. We'll see. I'll be really curious to see how that goes. But I think it's very possible that they end up slipping to that 4-5 matchup. The one thing I'll say, too, is like, I think it's more important than ever for the Lakers to get the 3 seed because of the Alperen Şengün piece of this. And what I mean by that is, like, if I needed the Lakers to win a playoff series, I look immediately at the offensive end of the floor because their defense will actually be a little better without Luka. That's not to say that Luka hasn't been good. They'll just play better defensive personnel with Luka out of the lineup. And it really comes down to, can Austin and LeBron create shots? Minnesota can switch, particularly with Gobert. And when they switch with Gobert, it turns Austin and LeBron into one-on-one players, and I think they're doomed if that ends up being the case. But they should be able to consistently pick on Şengün in ball screen action. And Austin is actually, especially when you give him a ton of usage, a very, very good ball screen player. Now, Men Thompson might have something to say about that. But Austin, I think, has a better chance of scoring and creating shots against Houston than he does against Minnesota. So to your point, it's more important than ever that they slot against Houston regardless of where that is, if that ends up being the 5 or the 6. And, you know, obviously Minnesota lost again last night, so it could get a little bit tricky on that front. But, like, to me now, if I'm a Lakers fan, I want Houston bad because I think they're drawing dead against Minnesota without Luka.
Well, to your point, we don't know who's going to be 5 or 6 or 4 for that matter. We don't know who's going to be 1 or 2. So it is hard to play that game when there are outcomes that you could fall in the standings but play a tougher team or, you know, what have you. So we'll see how it all shakes out. There's one other game we want to talk about very quickly here, and it is the Spurs beating the Clippers 118-99. You just mentioned it. No Victor Wembanyama, no problem. just kind of a blowout in the first half. They had an ugly third quarter and then a blowout in the fourth quarter. So they dominated this game. And they did it behind their guards, who is Stephon Castle, 8 of 15, 3 of 5 from 3. De'Aaron Fox, 22 points. Dylan Harper, 19. This is sort of becoming their big three guards, those three guys. And that's how they got it done, even without Wemby. On the other side, the Clippers played 18 games in March. I'm not trying to make an excuse for the Clippers, but I've just seen this a lot where you have your most condensed portion of your schedule and you're like, okay, we have to survive that. But then there's a hangover effect that you have when you just sprinted through a bunch of back-to-backs where it takes you a couple games to normalize. So what do you make of this outcome? A blowout win from the Spurs that was a wire-to-wire win.
Yeah, to your point, the Clippers have been kind of falling apart. I think they're 5-6 in their last 11 games, and Darius Garland had been looking fantastic, and he's been really bad the last couple of games. Ben Mathurin has had his moments in a Clippers jersey, but it's just still a lot of the same Ben Mathurin, where it's just kind of tunnel vision, forcing his way downhill and taking extremely mediocre mid-range jump shots and all that kind of stuff. So there's also weird stuff with the Clippers where there's just way too much like Chris Dunn dribbling the basketball and trying to do stuff where I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, get the ball to your ball handlers. Like, they're kind of a weird team. But I thought, this was talk to any Spurs fan, this was a very important win for them because they had a good record with Wemby out of the lineup, but it had been mostly bolstered by them beating bad teams in a lot of their games against some of the higher profile opponents. I know they have a couple good wins there. That they beat Denver once without Wemby. They beat the Lakers once without Wemby, although that was back when the Lakers were trash. But
it's still good though. I mean, that's good wins.
Yeah, decent win, right? Yeah, like but there's a certain amount of like they needed kind of like a good win without Wemby, and that Clippers team, I think at least on paper, looks a lot better than they do in the standings. And I thought it was fascinating how they pulled away. They pulled away in that kind of like late first quarter, early second quarter with a centerless group, and
Harrison Barnes at center,
a bunch of speed and a bunch of skill on the floor. And I really wanted to highlight Dylan Harper today because there was a lot of discourse going around, and I think there's some validity to the idea that, like, if you were saying just one season, maybe Con Knipple would have been better for this Spurs team just for one season because of the value of having him as a movement shooter. But I actually do think Dylan makes a lot of sense in the big picture for them. But he's completely flipped the script on that debate with how well he's played post All-Star break. And he annihilated the Clippers last night, just kept getting 2 feet into the paint. He kind of had some of those Shai Gilgeous-Alexander-esque little mid-range pull-ups where he dribbles into your chest, leads with that shoulder, extends the off arm a little bit, does a little like step back jump shot. Very gifted passer when he gets in there, makes all the right reads. Had a disgusting spin move on Nick Batum where he got all the way to the basket for a little right-handed layup. He is averaging 20 points per 36 minutes post All-Star because remember, his minutes are low. Under the circumstance, he's playing with so many guards. He's producing at a rate of 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists per 36 minutes post All-Star break. 66% true shooting. He's getting to the rim 4 times a game in only 24 minutes a game at 71% when he gets there, which is like LeBron James type finishing at the rim numbers or Giannis type finishing at the rim numbers. 50% on 3 attempts per game in the short to mid-range. So that's paint twos that are outside the restricted area in mid-range jump shots. 46% on corner threes. 47% on above the break threes. He has been awesome and legitimately looks like one of their like core foundational pieces now. He's been getting more minutes as this has happened. He's like legitimately playing more than half the game now. Dylan Harper looks amazing. All their guards, like it's I was actually thinking about that in just as a big picture thing between Oklahoma City and San Antonio. They've kind of indexed towards these smaller perimeter players that are in that like 6'3" to 6'6" range, but that are all like big, strong, athletic, switchy defenders that can guard multiple positions, that are legit two-way guys that can dribble, shoot, and pass at a high level and make good reads when they get into traffic. And so as a result, they can like really, really break teams down with just this awesome small ball approach. And then obviously both teams have this upside where you put Chet or Wemby with them, and now they have like this alien rim protector to anchor it all. But like, man, I was so impressed by that Spurs small ball group last night. I'm so impressed by Dylan Harper. Regardless of what you think about the Spurs versus the Thunder this year, you can't not view them as a perennial contender moving forward.
I mean, there's no question. And I think it's underrated how valuable it is when somebody can get into the paint. And there are players that can get into the paint but not finish. Like Bones Highland, this is the big thing about Bones, is he can get by anybody off the dribble. His handle is phenomenal, and he's got a quick first step. But he can't finish when he gets there. And, like, you can challenge him, so there's only so much value to what he's doing. And then on top of that, there's decision-making. Like, okay, you can get by your guy and you can finish, but if a team overloads, are you a guy that turns it over or just has to dribble out a lot? There's a lot of those. Dylan Harper projects to be a guy that has all three. And this is why when I look at the Spurs, I look at it and say, this team, this might be the last year you can get them. Maybe you can't get them this year. I'm starting to worry. This might be the clock starts now situation. But I certainly think it starts next year when you just talk about what you said. He's not even playing a lot of minutes, and what he does is so valuable, and it will just be refined from here. Get to the paint at will, make great decisions, and finish. And then you talk about the pressure Wemby puts on the paint and opens up the paint if you want to pop him. You have a combination there. Like, I love Castle. They have a bunch of players, but I keep looking at this Dylan Harper-Wemby combo. And I'm not saying it has to just be those two guys. The nice thing about them is they get all their guys. But just those two guys are, to me, what I look at and go, you better beat the Spurs right now, because once Dylan Harper matches and rises the minute total and becomes just one of the guys, I think it's just too perfect of a pairing with what they already have there. So I'm very fearful. Real quick, how many minutes do you think he plays in the playoffs? Because you're not playing him a lot right now, but it is possible that it's just like, you know what? It's playoff time. He's playing well. He's one of the top guys, and he's playing 34 minutes a night.
You know, this is actually a really good question. Steph Castle, to me, is a guy that I really, really like. To be clear, let me frame this discussion by saying I'm a big fan of Steph Castle, and I think he's a future perennial all-star. Steph Castle, to me, has like a lower floor because he can be a little turnover prone, and he can go ice cold from three. I think there's a version of this where we will see games in the playoffs where Dylan Harper plays more minutes than Steph Castle. Again, I think it'll go the other way too. I think we'll see games where Steph plays 35, 36 minutes and Dylan plays 14, 15 minutes. But I think there's a version of this story where we see kind of like an either or type of situation where sometimes it's a Dylan gets more minutes than Steph kind of situation. So just because of how volatile Steph can be as a younger player. So I think it'll probably land right around like 20, 22 minutes, but I could see nights where he plays 27, 28 and Steph plays 22, 24.
He might be the breakout star of the playoffs. I'm curious. We'll see what happens, but he might be the guy that everybody starts talking about once the playoffs begin. And if he plays just a little bit more minutes and he's in the paint every time down court, and you're like, man, this guy really has a talent that's super valuable. All right, let's take a break. Spurs looking great, man. They have a huge matchup with Denver on Saturday. We'll talk about maybe later on in the show. But let's take a break, because on the other side, we got to talk about some things nobody's talking about. Nobody, JT. Nobody's talking about these things except for us. We're going to get to them on the other side. Set. Upgrade your everyday essentials with fewer pieces, better materials. This time of year always makes you want to rethink your closet. You're trying to keep fewer things, but better ones. Pieces that are well-made and easy to wear all the time. Then you got to find Quince. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are thoughtful, and the pricing actually makes sense. Quince makes high-quality, everyday essentials using premium materials like 100% European linen and their insanely soft flow-knit activewear fabric. Their men's linen pants and shirts are lightweight, breathable, and comfortable, basically the perfect layer for spring. The pants strike the right balance between laid back and refined, so you look put together without trying too hard. And they're flow knit activewear, moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it all day. The best part is that their prices are 50 to 60% less than similar brands. This is true, man. You go on their website, they really do have nice stuff, and you'll be surprised at the price for them. How? Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markups. Everything is designed to last and make getting dressed easy. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/allNBA for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada. Go to Quince, that's QUINCE.com/allNBA for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/allcity. I also want to tell you guys about Shady Rays. You all know that moment. This is sunglass season, by the way, but you know the moment where you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach, on the roof of your car, or at a gas station 3 states away. Or maybe you just sat on them in the car. You laid them in your seat, you got out, you got back in, didn't realize they were there. You sit on them, all of a sudden you're like, dang it, I just broke my brand new sunglasses. Well, you got to go with Shady Rays because they've changed the game. They've got sunglasses that are made for real life, seriously good looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. And the wild part is if you lose or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. So now you can actually wear your sunglasses without fear on hikes, at concerts, on a boat, wherever. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. Go to shadyrays.com and use code ALLCITY for 40% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. All right, back here with Jason Timpf, segment 2. It's time to get into a topic I'm excited about. Why isn't anybody talking about Jaden McDaniels' injury in Minnesota? It's like these injuries pop up sometimes and you just go, oh, guy rolled his ankle, he'll be back, whatever. His patella tendinopathy, this is a scary injury. Not because it's scary like he might re-injure himself, but scary as in I think it's fair to question whether Jaden McDaniels will be 100% by the time the playoffs roll around. Already week to week, they have some high-profile games that really matter for their positioning in the standings. I don't know how much they care about being the 5th or the 6th seed, or you still hope you can climb up to the 4 seed. I don't know how much they're concerned with that, but I worry that without Jaden McDaniels, he's the connector of their team. He's the guy that gives them this like defensive versatility that can do a bunch of different things, in my opinion. And if you told me he was back by the playoffs, but 60, 70%, even 80%, I look at that and go, I might move them to 6th scariest team in a first-round matchup in the Western Conference if he is not close to 100% healthy. Am I crazy?
No, not at all. I mean, it's funny when Anthony Edwards went down, and obviously Ant is vitally important to their playoff chances. But remember, we talked about it on the show. I was like, when Ant goes down, they play harder because they know they need to in order to win. And this is a team that can have serious effort and energy and like kind of focus issues. And then 2, they move the ball more. There's just a little bit more flow in their offense because they don't have like a dominant on-ball guard. And I thought you saw that, especially before the Jaden McDaniels injury, where they just kind of had a little bit of a juice that they found as they were trying to float that ship. But I think when Jaden and Ant are out, they kind of dip below a certain amount of talent that you need to compete. Like I thought that was even glaring in the Detroit game last night, where it's a lot of Ayo Dosunmu, it's a lot of Julius Randle, it's a lot of like just kind of Kyle Anderson on the floor trying to spot up in the corner or make plays in the middle of the floor where you kept picking up like traveling violations or stepping out of bounds. Like it was just kind of one of those games where you saw the amount of total talent kind of take a dip. This particular injury is just super funky too, because it's not like an ankle sprain where you feel like there's a real defined timeline, or even a soft tissue injury where there's a really defined timeline. Right. It's one of those things where like it could linger and be problematic for a while because of how weird those tendons are, just how slow they tend to heal.
And so it hurts. Some of the soft tissue injuries, it's like, you know what, you got to warm it up and maybe you start slow, but you get loose and then you get going. This is one that there just might be a pain factor to it that and that's why you say he's playing at 70, 80%. There might just be, it's like you have a rock in your knee. So everything you do, you feel it.
Exactly. And so much of his game is predicated on his athleticism. Like he's this like, obviously shooting the ball better, but there's a lot of like driving closeout, slashing, offensive rebounding that he does. He's your primary point of attack defender. There's just so many things he does that is vitally important to this team's ceiling. And to your point, like, and now if I'm Minnesota, I'm begging to get the Lakers in the first round so I can give Jaden some more time to heal.
Maybe that's the case. I will say with Denver specifically, now you start to think about who are they going to play. They're probably not going to play Houston. There's a scenario where that could happen. Denver falls in the standings and both of those two teams rise. I don't think that's going to happen. So you're looking at either the Lakers or Denver. And I just know they have a lot of history. The same division. They met in the playoffs a couple times. Without Jaden McDaniels, I think Denver they don't have their teeth for what makes him so dangerous against Denver. He can score against Denver because of his athleticism and his length. He's given him real problems there. And he can be another defender for Jamal Murray and a shutdown guy for all the, like, okay, well, we have guys that can limit Murray even without Jaden McDaniels. Yoke's got Gobert. It's going to be a challenge. But can we shut off everything else? Can we shut off Cam Johnson and Aaron Gordon? He is the guy that makes that possible. And if you take him out, I just look at that and say Denver should be able to beat them in a playoff. I just would feel very confident if you told me he was not 100%, not 90%. 80% or below, I'm like, you know what? I think that really hurts their chances, and nobody seems to be talking about it. It's almost like an injury that flew under the radar. Another thing under the radar here, Houston's 4-game win streak. I think everybody had written Houston off as the 6th best team in the West, just full stop. Their separation now in the top 5. Well, here they are, and as every Houston Rockets fan will tell you, when Reed Sheppard starts, they win. He started 7 of the last 8 games, 7 of the last 8 games, and they've been rising. So have they figured out their formula? Has Ime done the thing where he hasn't gone to their best lineups until the very end of the season, and now it's like, all right, here we are. This is who we are for the playoffs. And actually, now it completes the circuit.
Yeah, one of the things that's been glaring to me during this late season slide from Houston, and again, as you mentioned, they've been playing better, but the biggest thing that stood out to me is just the lack of collective skill and IQ off of their stars. There's just so many poor spacing sequences, poor advantage sequences, like 4-on-3s and 3-on-2s that they blow. Guys will take mediocre threes early in the clock when they're like role players, when there's more time to move the ball around. There's just a lot of we totally underestimate how often when you're playing with a star, the defense is geared around trying to make that star uncomfortable and get him to get rid of the ball, which creates these advantage puzzles you have to solve. And so much of what makes that work over the years, when you look at the great teams, whether it's like the Celtics and their amazing drive and kick sequences that they've had over the years, whether it's like even some of the really cool high-low sequences you'll see with Hartenstein and Chet with OKC, where it's like bang on the roll man, lob pass to Chet, easy dunk. Or Denver, all the sequences they've had over the years, the way Golden State used to pay off those sequences. It's not just having guys who can shoot and can dunk. A big part of it is, do you have guys that can process? Do you have guys that can help make the decisions that pay those sequences off? And I think Reed Sheppard, just when he's on the floor, he brings a massive influx of dribbling, shooting, passing, overall feel for the game. And you just plug that in, and it just kind of raises that entire lineup's utility and their ability to pay those sequences off to a high level. It hasn't been perfect. He'll have games where he goes cold from 3. He'll have games where he's nightmarishly bad on defense. But overall, the biggest problem that the Rockets have had this season is what happens when teams throw the kitchen sink at their stars. And Reed is just their best pathway to solving that problem. And the last thing I'll say is I think we have to shout out Alperen Şengün here. It's been a weird season from him, because I remember I was talking about this last summer in my film sessions last season. Şengün was the player that stood out to me most often, where I'd be just watching film in a random morning, drinking my coffee, and I'd be like, oh man, Şengün's whooping that guy's ass. He was so good for so many extended stretches last year. And it came with a lot of expectations to start this season. And he came in and he had that super hot start where he played so well against Oklahoma City and he had some big games. But then it just for various reasons, and some of it Rockets fans will tell you was injuries, but he just didn't quite sustain that level of success that we had hoped to see from him this season. And he's been awesome since that second Lakers game where he came back and he was rough. Since that game, he's been attacking the basket with great effect, passing the basketball extremely well. They've been using him more as a passing fulcrum than they were earlier in the year, both in short rolls and in kind of elbow face-up situations. And Şengün's just kind of brought that star power piece where, I've always felt that one of the easiest ways to solve your team's problems is just to play better. And having a star that just plays a lot better can make everyone's job easier and just generally float the boat better. And so I think we got to shout out Şengün and just how well he's been playing as well.
Here's the question I have. There are 3 teams in the West now, and I'm going to leave the Lakers out of this because even with last night's loss, maybe you could throw them in, but I don't want to throw them in just because they've been playing so well. Denver, Minnesota, Houston in this, this little jumbled mess right now. Which of those teams do you think has momentum at their back? Denver has a 7-game win streak, but it's mostly been home games against bad teams, so it's not like they have these impressive ones. Saturday's a huge test for Denver against San Antonio. Very curious. They might be without Peyton Watson. Who knows about Aaron Gordon, so we'll see. But of those 3 teams, who has the momentum at the moment? Is it a chance that's actually Houston? Just recent momentum?
I still go Denver, man.
I do too.
The thing with Houston is like, I still think there's always that demon in the back of their mind that's like, oh, wait until we play like a really good team that just doubles the shit out of our stars and we are unable to process our way out of that. There's also like they have a lot of guys that I think who have already struggled with processing and shooting and finishing under normal regular season circumstances where it can get even worse when they get to the postseason. The one thing with Houston that gives me a little bit of pause there is that Şengün has had these flashes of really good defense over this stretch where like he can't sustain it. Like a classic example was that game against Minnesota where he's a defensive wrecking ball in the tail end of the fourth quarter, and then he's just abysmally bad and almost single-handedly cost them a game in overtime with how bad he was defensively. But like, if Şengün can be really good defensively, I start to take them a little more seriously because obviously they just have this defensive punch that they can throw. But I think there's always, I think that all of the teams in the West, Minnesota included, they all kind of look at Houston and I think they see a team that's beatable. I think that Minnesota, the injuries are what kind of drag them down in terms of their momentum.
I think Denver too. I mean, it's under the radar again, but Peyton Watson had a hamstring injury that kept him out like 7 weeks. He comes back and plays 4.5 games and re-injures it. He is their second most important defender, in my opinion, behind Aaron Gordon. And by the way, Aaron Gordon missed a layup the other day because he couldn't get up above the rim for it. So it's like one of these things where you go, man, their two defensive players are getting hurt. Minnesota, Jaden McDaniels getting hurt, whereas Houston has Reed Sheppard they go to. It's like Houston, you have a reason and you can tell yourself, like, we went to this thing, we made a change, and we're playing well. That's momentum, where the other two teams are, we're losing guys that are key and we're not sure about their future. That's like a major concern.
Do you think Reed Sheppard and Alperen Şengün are going to be relentlessly targeted in a playoff series, though? That would be my like kind of flip side there. Like, I think,
no question.
I think that especially when you're talking about teams like the Lakers and Denver in particular, like Jamal, even if it's not Luka, Austin and LeBron are going to go at those two guys like crazy. Murray and Jokic would go at those two guys like crazy. I think, like, to me, Houston, I think you would agree about this. Like, even if we take the two rosters at their very best, would we both agree that Houston is the most flawed roster?
For sure.
Yeah. So I think I still.
But again, if there's injuries to Jaden McDaniels, Aaron Gordon, and Peyton Watson, then no. This Denver becomes just as flawed, and specifically in that matchup. Like, if you get Denver, Houston 4-5, one of the reasons I love that matchup is I think that Peyton Watson might be the best Kevin Durant defender in the entire NBA. He's been phenomenal against him, but if he's not in that series, that's a Christian Brown assignment. He doesn't even see Christian Brown.
Yeah, I hear you. I think there's a pretty clear way to rank those four teams. I'd go Denver 1, LA 2, Minnesota, Houston as 4. I think that's if I had to rank those four teams, I think like that. Would you agree?
I'm in this weird place where I cover Denver, but I believe in them less, it seems, than both you and Legs. But this year has just been, it's broken my brain.
Did last year not do anything for you?
It's just the injuries.
We all picked against them in the Clippers series.
This is the thing about Denver is they, of all teams I've ever watched in my life, they seem to care the least about the regular season, and then they're great in the postseason. But these injuries has had me concerned. I'm just concerned about their health. Here's another one nobody's talking about. Cade Cunningham goes down. Pistons are going to slide. Or are they 7-2 without Cade? And they won the game, by the way. He only played 5 minutes. It was against Washington. So you could almost say 8-2 in their last 10 without Cade Cunningham. And they've looked great defensively. I mean, I think they're 5th defensive over that span. So it's not even like they've dropped. They've got wins over the Lakers, Minnesota twice, Toronto. Their losses are in overtime to Oklahoma City and Atlanta, so it's not even like they have bad losses. They have hard-fought losses. So the Pistons, who guys like me have said, I think they're vulnerable in the first round and all this or that, their defense seems to be able to stay consistent even without Cade, and they can still win without him. You get him back for the playoffs, maybe they're actually going to survive this whole thing.
Yeah, it's first of all, I think even when Cade was healthy, the best thing about this team, like they're even a more exaggerated effect of this than Oklahoma City. Where, like, if you ask me what the best thing about Oklahoma City is, it's their defense. Even though Shai is potentially the best player in the world, that's just how. That's why they've had such an insane net rating when he's been off the floor. That's why you see them just completely decompose. Like, that's a Laker offense that has literally been unbelievable with LeBron, Luka, and Austin on the floor post All-Star break. Like, and even against great defenses, they've been unbelievable. And they chewed up and spit out the Lakers, right? Like, Shai obviously brings this whole other element to it, but Detroit brings a similar dynamic where like Cade is obviously super important to them, but the best thing about them is they maul you on the offensive glass and they maul you on the perimeter. That's the way that Detroit stays in all these games. And then I think you really got to give a lot of credit to specifically Duncan Robinson and Dennis Jenkins and just the job they've done continuing to kind of just give them a certain offensive floor that's allowed them to win some of these games. Dennis is a really good player. And even before he kind of took on this more on-ball role, he was functioning really good as like a second side guy off of Cade and just kind of playing off the advantages that Cade creates. But he could shoot from three. He's a good mid-range player. He can make all the passing reads in action, gets to the rim just enough, has a little bit of a grifty ability to get to the foul line. Like he just is a classic, well-rounded NBA scoring guard, and he has been able to provide just enough offense. And then Duncan, the most underrated thing with Duncan over the years, and he really picked this up over his final couple years in Miami, is he's this great shooter, but he's an outstanding passer coming off of screening action. He's very good at turning his shooting threat into 4-on-3s for his team. And he countless times last night was like hitting Paul Reed and Jalen Duren on rolls underneath the basket just by coming flying off of a screen, but then also paying off some of these transition sequences by hitting big three-point shots. Like they got just enough offensive juice from Duncan Robinson and Dennis Jenkins. I'd even throw in a little bit of Tobias Harris here with his occasional ability to go down to the block and hit a little right shoulder fadeaway. Like those three guys have brought just enough offensive juice to capitalize on the fact that Detroit mauls you on the margins and turn a bunch of these losses or potential losses into wins.
I like your point about I love the Duncan Robinson point here because we were talking earlier about Dylan Harper and how a lot of guys can get to the paint, but what do you do? How do you like leverage that talent into something even greater with passing and finishing? This is with shooters, we talk about always a movement shooter. He can run off screens and catch, and that's so valuable. But when you can do more than that, it's a different category. And this is why Con Knipple, a guy I've been raving about all year, is I'm like, that guy's just a movement shooter, run him around, and get it open. But if he's not open, he also knows what to do next to create another advantage. And so it is a whole different category of shooter. And it's why I never have loved guys like a Luke Kennard. You know, like Luke Kennard, you watch him on the Lakers. I do think he's a good movement shooter, but I don't love his ability to leverage that into other skills. It's more or less he either was open and makes the shot or not. And so it is a difference. And I like your call out for Duncan Robinson. That's a good one. We got a lot more here. Another one. Why isn't anybody talking about Tim Hardaway Jr. for sixth man? And I checked the odds today. I think he was like 8th. So he's moved up a little bit on FanDuel. He's plus 7,500. I'm not sure he is sixth man of the year. I think there's some other guys. Right now, Keldon Johnson's number 1, which I find a little interesting because the Spurs have a lot of guys that I like off their bench. It doesn't feel like a one-man thing. Jaime Jaquez, Reed Sheppard, Naz Reid, AJ Mitchell all ahead of him. But here's the thing. Almost 14 points per game. I think people would be surprised by that. 41% from three. It's the most threes he's ever made in his entire career. 9th most NBA threes made in the NBA. 9th most. And this is a guy coming off the bench playing like 24 minutes a game. I don't think this is the classic. I don't think he's sixth man of the year, but he should be in the conversation. He has won a lot of games for Denver. And what I mean by that is Denver has the consistent guys, the Jokic and Jamal and AG, like this or that. They always just need a guy to show up. That guy has been him at least half of the time or more this year. And it's like a true sixth man. He completes a rotation and makes them what they are.
Yeah, well, so the one thing I'll say about this is it kind of goes counter to the segment here because I feel like you and I have talked about Tim Hardaway Jr. on the show quite a bit. But like
nobody's talking about it, JT.
He was one of those guys where like immediately when he signed, you're like, oh, well, that's gonna work. Like it was such an obvious like basketball fit right away. The one thing I'll add with him is he is an extremely good contested three-point shooter. And this is one of those things that I think is especially valuable in the NBA there are so many guys where you get wrapped up in three-point percentage. It's like, oh, this guy shoots 37% from three. And it's like, okay, is he shooting 37% from three on completely wide open conceded shots from the opponent? Or is he shooting 37% from three on volume while being heavily contested? You know what I mean? Like that's just for any random role player. When you bring both efficiency and aggression at the three-point line, that's when you bring the peak of spacing. That's when you bring that like, oh, we're sending a double team to Nikola Jokic that like from that Lakers game in crypto a couple weeks ago. We're sending a double team at Jokic that's at the right elbow extended damn near to the sideline. And Jokic throws a pass that's like kind of a little bit towards the deep corner. And Luka's contesting him, and he's like it's like an impossible shot, but it's like that's just money because Tim Hardaway's not just a spot up shooter, but a guy who can make complex spot up shots, which I think is super important. And like, you know, for all the talk about Cam Johnson, and Cam's been better as of late, but like for all the talk about Cam Johnson not being Michael Porter Jr., I feel like Tim Hardaway Jr. has replicated some of that MPJ audacity as like just an aggressive spot up player that just brings a lot of that like, oh, I can't believe he made that shot type of sequences.
100%, man. I mean, he really has a no conscience. And I just don't think people realize he's been in the league 15 years. To set a personal record for made threes in a year this deep into your season off the bench in limited minutes, that's pretty impressive. And then here's a crazy one. If it weren't for Jamal Murray, he would have set a new franchise record for made threes for the Denver Nuggets. They've been around since the three-point line was invented. Even if you go back to the ABA, they had the three-point line. And yet here he broke the record this year, except for he was beaten by Jamal Murray, who nobody's talking about, JT. Nobody's talking about Jamal Murray. 25.6 points per game. And I believe was it 16th in the NBA in scoring this year. That's pretty impressive. It'd be top 16 in scoring. And then 43.4% on threes on almost 8 attempts per game. By far the most efficient volume three-point shooter in the NBA this year. So if we were like every year you could award best shooter, you know, like this is a statistical thing. You just say, who's the best shooter this year? It was Jamal Murray, and he's the 16th leading scorer. I almost feel like his year, and some of this is he had such a consistent output for like 5 years. His numbers were the same. This year is so different, and I don't think people quite realize. I look at this year more than ever and say it's Murray always can step up in a playoff series and win you a game, but I just think it's possible he could win you a series. He's playing like the type of guy that can win you a playoff series, not just a game or two.
So this is where I get to take a rare victory lap. Because I before the season I ranked Jamal Murray over James Harden as my 25th best player in the NBA. I had James 26th. He just missed my rankings, and I got absolutely eviscerated for it. And it's funny because I still remember. So guys, for those of you who don't know, when I moved to Denver this summer, obviously we didn't know anybody up here, and Adam and I had worked together a couple times. I'd been a guest on the show 2 or 3 times, but Adam reached out and was super kind. Him and his wife were very kind to my wife and I when we first moved here, and made us feel like we had friends and people that we knew in Denver, which was super important. As you can imagine, you do something scary like pick your life up and move it 800 miles to the Northeast. But I was sitting with Adam on his porch. We were having an ice cold beer, looking at the beautiful Rocky Mountains, and we were just like basically recording an off the record pod.
So true. That's exactly what it was. It was this, but on the porch. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like talking all things NBA, and rightfully so. You and your wife were both frustrated after a kind of uneven season from Jamal, which wasn't just in the regular season. It extended into the postseason. There was like really great games, and then
my wife has a very strong love-hate relationship to Jamal Murray. I mean, I get a text during games from my wife sometimes, and she's like, "Oh, I hate Jamal." I'm like,
it was funny because I remember your response at the time was very much like, I believe in Jamal's upside too, but here's why I'm frustrated kind of thing.
Yep.
And what I told you, if you remember, is I was like, I just think Jamal knows this year is a great opportunity for them. And so I think he'll come into camp in better shape than he ever has. And that ended up basically being what it was. Is like usually what happens with Jamal is he comes into camp and he's out of shape. And you broke it down perfectly that night on your patio. You're like, he comes into camp out of shape. He ends up suffering some kind of injury in like November, December. He's kind of a shell of himself. And then right around January, right before the All-Star votes are like finalized, he starts playing really good basketball and then ends up being a snub. And then
every year except for this year.
Yeah. This was the year. This was the year where he finally showed up to camp in shape and kind of played his best basketball. And like, it just, to your point, we all know the volatility and the up and down stuff that comes with Jamal, but this is a year where he's been at the best version of himself more often than not, and it's been really, really fun to watch.
And I just think if you go through and listed the top like 15, 20 players of this season, I'm not saying what they are overall, I'm saying just this season, I think he's up there this year. You said top 25, but I just think that he'll likely be an all-NBA player this year. And if we're being honest and you fill out that second team, he has as strong a case for second team, in my opinion, as he does for third. And I don't think there really is one for not. When you just talk about the best shooter in the NBA this year, he's been fantastic.
And with all these guys getting disqualified, he might just
that's true. Is there anybody left? He might be first team. He might be MVP. Who knows? Let's go. Nobody's talking about the Atlanta Hawks. And I get why. They weren't a threat. They kind of come out of nowhere. They had a big, long win streak where they weren't playing anybody, but they were winning. But they've now won 17 of 19. Their only losses, Boston and Houston, very understandable losses. Good win, but also their only good wins have been against Orlando 2 times. They did beat Boston. They beat Detroit. That was a good one. But all of a sudden they have a big 3. And you never would have guessed it. Jalen Johnson, you would have guessed. CJ McCollum. But most important of all, their leading scorer post-All-Star break, Gilgeous-Alexander Walker. They have a big 3, and it's those 3 guys. Nobody's talking about them. Are they an actual threat now? Because it looks like they could be the 5 seed. Are they a threat against a Knicks or a Cavs if they got one of those guys? Is this a team that's just hot at the right time, and now all of a sudden it's like, hey, it doesn't matter about talent. They're the team that is more connected at this moment.
I wouldn't pick them against any of those teams, but they are a threat. I think they have a formula that's just working extremely well for them right now. On the defensive end of the floor, Dyson Daniels and Gilgeous-Alexander Walker are forcing a bunch of turnovers. They're using Onyeka Okongwu in kind of like a modified high drop where he's not coming up all the way, but he's coming up like part of the way to where it kind of creates this indecision with the ball handler where it looks like some passing reads are open. And so they either force interior passes that Okongwu is stealing, or they force cross-court passes where you're seeing a lot of like Zachary Rissache, Jonathan Kuminga, Jalen Johnson getting steals on the weak side. They're running out in transition like crazy on those turnovers and converting points off of turnovers. I think if I'm not mistaken, they're number 1 in the league in points off of turnovers post All-Star break, or in this, at least in this 19-game stretch. So you're getting the defense to transition piece. And then on the offensive end in the half court, it's really a combination of one, Jalen Johnson has finally figured out a way to like really run some quality half court offense. It's the inverted screens with Nickeil and CJ slipping out, Dyson Daniels slipping into the lane for his like little floater that he hits 50% of the time. Dyson's also doing a ton of damage on the offensive glass. I think Onyeka Okongwu deserves a ton of credit because he's become not just a stretch 5, but like a, oh my God, we have to guard him stretch 5, which has made things really tough to deal with in terms of spacing for defenses.
It's like Al Horford, when Al Horford really became a great, not just a guy that can take it, but where it's like, man, no, that's a great option any possession.
Exactly. Like that, the Celtics game is a classic example. It's like, oh, there's Luka Garza. You're kind of like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. We'll live with it. It's the best option.
See what you got, and Onyeka was torching the Celtics in that game because they always run deep drop. The Celtics are the only team in the NBA that allow fewer than 40 points in the paint per game because they run deep drop and they just sag into the paint like crazy. And so when you have a 5 that can shoot, it can cause real problems. And Okongwu was amazing in that second half run where they really kind of blew out Boston. They went up by 21 in that game. But like Okongwu space in the 4, and then the big one, you hit it. Gilgeous-Alexander Walker, like
Stud.
He has like well-rounded his game into more of like a legit scoring guard. He's got all these like moves in the mid-range and counter moves and stuff that have made him a more dynamic scorer. Jalen Johnson has become a guy that can hit like little post-up fadeaways over both shoulders, which has made him more dynamic offensively. They're like just legitimately very good. The question is, they're dealing with a group of teams at the top of the East that's just better. And I think I'd put it this way. I'd give them like no shot against Boston, but I'd give them like a legit upset shot against Detroit, Cleveland, or New York.
Well, here's what's interesting. So they play Brooklyn tonight. That'll be their 20th game of this stretch. Let's say they go 18-2, beat Brooklyn. Brooklyn's tanking. I think that'll happen. Their last 4 games are tougher than their previous 20. But they're also interesting because it could be a playoff preview. They have the Knicks at Cleveland, home against Cleveland, and then they finish at Miami. So we just talked about if they are the 5 seed, they're likely to play one of New York or Cleveland. They might play them leading into a playoffs, which is always interesting to me when 2 teams can see like, we're about to play them in a week, and now we're in this game that's kind of important for standings. It's such a great spot to be in.
That can go the other way though. Remember that year that Phoenix kept beating Minnesota in the regular season and then beat them in the big game, and then all of a sudden Minnesota just beat the crap out of them.
Because sometimes it's hard to beat a team 4 out of 7, but when you have to beat them like 6 out of 7, just because like that becomes even harder. And then there is the question of how much do you show to get these wins. So it could they? But just real quick, what do you think they go there? At Brooklyn, New York, Cleveland twice, Miami.
Cleveland is not very good right now. Atlanta's just straight up playing better than them. Donovan Mitchell looks a little banged up. I'll go 3-2. I think.
Wow. If they go 3-2, they might be the 5 seed then. That would be That would be so interesting. And depending on which 3 they win, they can kind of determine the outcome since they played Cleveland and New York. You could actually determine which of those teams is in the 3-4 spot.
They're a buzzsaw in the regular season because, and this is why I think Boston would beat them in a playoff series. Yeah. Your only shot is to kind of match them speed for speed and kind of keep them in the half court where they're still somewhat mediocre. Although they've been better. I tracked this the other day. 12 times in those 19 games, they had a half court offensive rating over 100 to their credit. But again, a lot of bad teams in there. But I think if you can kind of slow them down, you're fine. But it's just really difficult to slow them down in a regular season where you're like, do we really have to deal with this right now?
We got to run through a couple other ones because I know you've kept you long. But here's one that I put. This is a total Adam addition to the list. This is a real nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about Brice Sensabaugh. Post All-Star break, 20 points per game, 40% from 3 on 7 attempts. I've watched this guy enough times. You don't watch every Utah Jazz game. Sometimes there's teams like this where your sample size is skewed because you don't watch him a ton. Every time I watch him, he's good. And I'm watching him, I'm like, this guy can play, right? He can shoot the 3. He's kind of dynamic off the dribble. Brice Sensabaugh 20 points per game post All-Star break. 20, I think it's 18-game sample size or 20-game sample size. Is this a thing?
Big athletic dude with some ball skills. He's a little bit one of those guys that kind of is better on the ball than he is just in the flow,
totally.
Which I think
his game
plays into his hands this time of year. He does have one of the nastiest, like Kevin Durant, hezzy pull-up threes that you'll see where he'll just kind of get the ball in that high hesitation dribble in his left hand, wait for the guy to kind of sit too low in his stance, and then he'll just rise up and shoot. I think he's shooting 37, 38% on pull-up threes this year. That's a season-long stat. So, he's got some real ball skills there. It's just a question. The one thing I'll add with Brice is, the shooting is important because I think if you look at next year's Jazz team, they're going to be constantly playing a lot of lineups that have, Walker Kessler and Jaren Jackson in at the same time. And I think having guys that can shoot next to them are going to be super important. But he also kind of is a tweener 3-4 kind of guy too. So that's the other thing that makes him a little tricky with how many 2 big lineups they'll be running next year.
All I know is Utah's trying to tank, and they keep finding themselves in close games against good teams in the fourth quarter. And there's Brice Sensabaugh.
I love this Jazz team. They're going to be awesome next year, Adam.
And there's Brice Sensabaugh with 20 points, and he's kind of cooking. And I'm going, all right, well, do they need to pull him out? Because they're going to win if they keep him in. I like Brice Sensabaugh.
I would say that they are better than 50% to be a top 8 seed.
This is nobody is talking about the Utah tank this year. This is a 45-win team that somehow managed to win 18 games. This is
tank. In terms of tanking to expectations, this might be the peak of it this season.
They nailed it, man. 2 more for you. Nobody's talking about Paul George's return because it's only been 4 games. 28 points, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 43% from the 3 on 12 attempts per game. 3-1 in those games with wins over, I guess, just Charlotte. I mean, Chicago and Washington, not that impressive. But Paul George, we just think of him as old, wash this or that. He's kind of been a superstar / super role player and goes back and forth between both of them depending on what they need. Kind of a big deal. I mean, they're the dumbest team in the NBA in terms of trying to project what they are because they have literally not had their guys. But Paul George putting together a relatively good sample size of good games in a row right before the playoffs feels noteworthy.
Yeah, it's so funny because I remember when they first sat everybody down and they even shut Tyrese down for a little bit. You're like, okay. They're like, oh, maybe we're going to bring everybody back at some point for the end of the season. And you're just like, yeah, all right. We'll see, we'll believe it when we see it. And then all of a sudden it's there's Embiid, there's Paul George. They look like Embiid. They look like Paul George. All of a sudden Tyrese Maxey comes back. He looks great. They have that Charlotte game where they're flying around on defense and Paul George is hitting a tough movement 3 in the corner. That's the game winner essentially. And you're like, oh, okay. Now all of a sudden this team's every bit as good as that kind of Cleveland, New York tier, right? At the 3-4 spot. So it's one of those things where you basically can't count them out at this point. I will say this is what I envisioned when they signed Paul George originally, when they signed him away from the Clippers. What I imagined him as was the nuclear version of the weak side scorer. Essentially, you're still running a ton of Maxey Embiid 2-man game, but you're going to have to defend that action 3-on-2. You're going to have to bring a third defender over. The skip passes are going to be there. What if Paul George is just playing off of advantage nonstop? Is he going to be able to do a ton of damage as like a shooter and as like a closeout attacker, as a guy that can run the occasional action and hit a 3 off the dribble or something like that? And it just hasn't materialized because Paul George has been so banged up and has been such a shell of himself, but he's looked really, really good since he's come back. I'm with you where I want to see some tougher competition before I like really get on board. But in an Eastern Conference, like between them, Atlanta and Charlotte,
yep.
If they just get one of these other teams to pop, like let's say that Franz Wagner gets it together in the next week, Orlando is straight up falling apart. Yeah. But like if for some reason Franz can get it together, or maybe it's Miami, I don't know. If they get one more good team in there, and I think Charlotte, because Charlotte's up at the 8th seed now, so they're going to be. I think Charlotte's got a good chance to make a first round series. There's a chance where we actually get an awesome East first round. Which hasn't been the case for years.
I think it's happening.
The first round has always been crap, but like we might get 4 good East first round series here.
Yeah, I'm optimistic for the playoffs, although I will say in the West, I'm worried about these teams dropping like flies, man.
Yeah.
Injuries hitting right before the playoffs
it's always
the worst thing in sports, man. The worst thing. Hit that outro music, Atticus. And actually, Atticus, I have a question for you. Can I claim Brice Sensabaugh? Can I add to my guys this late into the season, the final week of the season? Is that too late to add somebody to my guys roster?
It's your show.
I'm curious if this is legal. I think I'm going to do it. Legs
isn't even yours.
He's mine? All right. Legs isn't even here to like rule on it. We're Brice Sensabaugh, my guy. I'm sure this won't come up in my face. FanDuels of the night. This is, of course, presented by FanDuel. Look at some games over the weekend. Pacers, Hornets, Wolves, Sixers, Hawks, Nets. And what do we have? Wolves, Sixers is a good game. Bulls, Knicks is not. Jazz, Rockets, Celtics, Bucks. Man, not a lot of good games tonight. What about
big spreads there, Adam?
Some very big spreads there. What else do we have? Do we have a Saturday one? Because Saturday is where it's really at. Spurs, Nuggets. I don't know if Denver's going to be healthy enough, but you talk about another MVP battle, Jokic and Wemby. I just am curious what Jokic's approach. I know what Wemby's approach will be in that game. He's going all out.
He's going for blood.
I don't know about Jokic, and I'm curious to see.
I looked at tickets. I was going to go. I had already agreed with my wife to go with her to this lunch thing for a competition that she had done. So, like, unfortunately, I'm out. But I was, like, looking at tickets. I was like, man, I want to be in the arena for that one.
I think it'll be a great one, and I have no idea which way it's going to break. But, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We are with Mark Stein over the weekend, so you want to stay locked to the channel for that. And we have some great content planned here for the rest of the year, so you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the like button. Leave us a comment below. And have yourself a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
We all silly like the mayor.